Tensions simmer at the Indo-China border over the Doklam standoff. The Comptroller and Auditor General of India has raised some serious concerns about the effectiveness and reliability of the indigenously developed Akash surface-to-air missile defense system. The Akash missile system, which was meant as a critical defense infrastructure to down enemy aircraft, helicopters and so on, was found to be woefully unreliable with a failure rate of 30%. Some of the missiles, in fact, even failed to take off during testing. The indigenously developed missiles were meant to be installed in the critical Siliguri corridor or the Chicken Neck corridor, which is India's gateway to the east. But what's astonishing here is that the Akash missile system, procured at an enormous cost of 3,600 crore rupees, has not even been installed in key positions. The CAG further highlighted that the DRDO developed and BEL produced Akash missiles, instead of having a stipulated shelf life of 10 years, could well be expiring by the end of this year, after having been produced only in 2014. And to talk more about this, joining me here this evening is Mr. Brahma Chelani. He is a professor of strategic studies at the Center for Policy Research. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here. Now, the CAG in its report very clearly says that our defense missile system, which India produced at a premium cost to counter China, is deficient in quality. What do you make of this, especially coming at a time when tensions are high as far as the India-China border is concerned?
Transparency is important in any democracy, but so is also timing. The timing of this CAG report is a bit odd, coming, as you just mentioned, at the height of India-China border tensions. In fact, this is the second CAG report which has come during this standoff between Indian and Chinese troops.
Right,
the first report, as you recall, was about Indian military not having adequate ammunition stocks.
Absolutely.
I think these two reports could have been released later, not in the midst of a crisis.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point, because Chinese media has already picked up this report and they are going to interpret it in their own way, and this also comes at a critical time. Do you see this having an impact on the diplomatic diplomatic front? They're trying to come up with a resolution. Do you think it's going to have any bearing on that?
It won't have a bearing on the diplomatic front, but it will only aid China's psychological warfare against India. It kind of paints India as being vulnerable to a Chinese attack. Actually, the truth is the reverse, because the standoff is at the tri-junction, where the Indian military is in a stronger position because of geography and tactical reasons. It's the Chinese troops that are quite vulnerable to an Indian attack at the tri-junction, but the Chinese psychological war has sought to paint the opposite picture, to frighten India into submission.
Right. Also, sir, when we talk about precision systems and India's defense, needs along the border, do you think India has, something better, something better than the Akash missile system? So, in case if these are faulty, India can use other, guided systems to guard its borders, because at the Siliguri corridor, Akash was to be deployed, but it hasn't been.
The Akash is an anti-aircraft, anti-drone missile system. And when you fire Akash against an enemy object, you don't fire one or two Akash missiles, you fire multiple Akash missiles to intercept, to destroy the enemy aircraft or drone. So even if you take the CAG's report at its face value, that about 30% of the Akash missiles fail, the fact is that even if one gets through and destroys the enemy aircraft or drone, that's sufficient. In addition to the Akash missiles, the Indian Army has other anti-aircraft systems in place in the northeast, as well as in the Siliguri corridor. I think it's not very clear from the CAG report whether they are referring to the first batch of Akash missiles that were manufactured, or they're referring to more recent ones. It's also not very clear from the report whether this glitch that they are referring to is a design glitch or is it because of storage reasons, because any missile in terms of its fuel and other elements can degrade if the missile is not properly stored. So we do not know from the CAG report whether these glitches are because of inherent design flaws or because of storage problems. Also, when the CAG earlier said that the Indian Army does not have enough ammunition stocks, it was referring to a multi-front war scenario. India fighting both China and Pakistan,
right,
with the Indian Army having optimal levels of ammunition stocks. No military in the world is happy with its armaments and its ammunition stocks. They always want more. Look at the US Army. But we're not looking at maximalist scenarios. We're looking at more realistic scenarios. In terms of realistic scenarios, India has adequate stocks.
Right. Also, Dr. Brahmachalani, this is, a program which is essentially a Make in India program, so to speak, as far as the Akash missile system goes. Do you think this comes as a dent to India's Make in India at a time when it's looking at reducing its arms imports, critical defense systems imports from the outside? Can India then count on manufacturing these kind of critical systems for itself?
When any nation develops a weapon system, including a missile system, glitches are common. You develop a system, you discover that there are some flaws in it, you rectify those flaws, you improve the accuracy, the range, and the precision of a missile. That's how countries learn and develop. The fact that some glitches have been discovered in the Akash system is no cause for despair. If these glitches are there, they need to be rectified and will be rectified in my view, because India has a pretty robust missile capability.
I take your point, Dr. Chilani, but also this has been happening for years as far as Akash is concerned. There were talks from as early as 2003 of this whole program being shelved as well. And the Indian Army, according to the CAG report, has said that it's not so much in favor of using the Akash. It would rather go for the Israeli quick reaction surface-to-air missiles instead of this. So what does that say about its capabilities and also the Indian Army's inclination for other missile systems, in this case, Israel's?
That's a good point. In fact, it says a lot about the fact that Indian Army prefers imported systems, that India has become an arms-dependent country, dependent on arms imports from overseas. This is not good for India. In fact, one of the wise things that Mao Zedong said in the 1950s, that the first test any country has to pass on its way to becoming a major power is the ability to defend itself with its own capabilities. If India remains dependent on arms imports, if it remains dependent on even basic arms imports, there is no way Make in India can succeed. Make in India can only succeed when we develop locally, we learn from the flaws and the glitches, we rectify those glitches, and we develop better and better systems. That's how any country in the world has become a major manufacturer of armaments. No country can actually design and develop a perfect system in the first go. It's a trial and learn method that every country has to adopt and to adjust to.
Absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, I think it's important at this point from the CAG report for India to figure out what exactly has been the problem with Akash and to rectify it once and for all, because thousands of crores are being spent and the borders need to be guarded. And it will also be a success for the DRDO and all the other agencies that are involved in making this kind of a defense system. Thanks so much, Dr. Brahmachalani, for speaking to us here on WION. Pleasure having you on the show.